Hey, my, here we are, sitting in a beach chair in the middle of a field, wondering what the heck John Keating is up to, I bet, right? So I've been thinking about my collection, collecting DNA lately, and everything brings me back to right here. In 1973, Steely Dan said they were never going back to their old school, and I kind of felt the same way. I couldn't wait to get out of school because I knew there was more important things for me to do. But I'll tell you, right here is hollowed ground for me. This is, if you've listened to any of my stuff over the last couple of years, you've gotten bits and pieces of my my backstory and my origin story and all that fun stuff. But this is where it all began, and 49 years ago in this spring. Um, the Keatings moved. I want to say January, February of '74. We moved from Philadelphia out to sleepy Audubon, Pennsylvania. Um, wasn't a lot going on out here. Most people in the city back then moved to New Jersey. Uh, my family, my mom and dad decided to move out here, buy a house, chunk of land, big old quarter acre in the sticks, as they say. They were row house people their entire lives. Then they were land barons on that quarter of an acre in Audubon, Pennsylvania. Idyllic place to grow up. I don't know how they found it or why they found it, but wouldn't change my first 16 years, 11 months for anybody else's in the world. Back to the spring of '74, I've told the story that I made my debut on a baseball field in the middle of a tornado watch when half the team didn't show up. I was the bat boy for my two brothers, Joe and Paul, also known as Mike and Dick. So Mike and Dick were part of the Audubon Recreation Association A's back then. Green shirts and whatever pants you wanted to wear. Nobody judged back then, so you could wear your striped pants, you could wear your corduroys, your dungarees, you could wear capris, clam diggers, whatever you wanted. But the top half, hat, shirt, all business. The bottom half allowed you to let your freak flag fly. And so that fateful day in the spring of 1974, I was the bat boy for that team. And as I said, half the team didn't show up. The sky was green. Many were convinced it was the end of the world. My dad sent me out to right field, which is where I'm sitting right now. Made my debut. I felt like I was miles away from anybody else. Turns out I'm looking at a sign right now at the fence, 150 feet from home plate. So I was probably playing a deep right field that day because I trusted my legs, my young legs, to come in on anything. I just didn't want anything hit over top of me. I don't know anything else that happened after I took my position in right field. I don't know whether we played anything at all, whether we played 6 innings, whatever, in the old coach pitch soiree that afternoon, evening. Coach pitch back then meant the coach rolled out of whatever work clothes they had. My father, for instance, wore a button-down, probably avocado-striped shirt straight from work. Polyester slacks. They didn't have pants, apparently. They were called slacks back then. He would wear dress socks and leather, slip-on leather shoes with probably a half-inch heel. My father was 6'5", so imagine a 6'5" character pitching to a bunch of 4-foot nothings. That was just after the pitching era, so I'm sure the mound had been lowered. But anyway, coach pitch. My dad pitched. I don't know anything after that. Now, Audubon Recreation Association is still is everything to me, meaning that's where I fell in love with the game of baseball, and that's where I fell in love with the hobby of collecting. I grew up in an era, like many of my age, where we didn't have local card stores in my formative years. We got our cards pretty much everywhere, convenience stores, grocery stores, stuff like that. But over here at Audubon Recreation Association, if you look at this building right over here, uh, that was the snack bar. And that snack bar is still red. It may be a different facility, it may be a different structure, but it looks the same size, same design as it was back in the '70s. That's where I would buy my cards as a collector. I would buy them elsewhere, of course, but I remember buying cards, putting them into my back pocket, my uniform pocket sometimes my corduroy pocket, depends which level. Wrappers in there, my gums bulging with razor sharp gum to get me through that game. Bubble gum was my greenies back then in the 70s. So, yeah, here, Audubon Recreation Association. Back in the day, I've also told the story that even though we called it Little League, it turns out we weren't in any kind of league at all. We were just a recreation league that played games. And then when the season was over, it felt like the season was 6 months long. It was probably 8 weeks. When the season was over, we went on to do other things. Vacation in the summertime. Behind me, way back behind the snack bar, we'd play flag football in the fall. I was part of the mighty Raiders team of 1976. I can always tell people I was on the Raiders in 1976. And then we'd play biddy league basketball on a linoleum court inside of a church a little further on down the road here. So baseball cards, bought, purchased. I also remember that I bought my 1976. This is where I got my 1976 Walter Payton rookie card out of a pack right here at Audubon Recreation Association. I'll tell a story about that card a little bit later on in another episode, but it's also the site for many, many years. I want to say going on probably, it must have been 40 years that I held the Keating family record for most home runs by a family member, which surprises me because my brothers were bigger, better athletes than I. One of my brothers had a son who was a great athlete as well, but apparently my long-standing record of one, and that would have been on field A behind me. My one career out of the park home run was a family record for many, many decades. I almost hit a second one later on in the season. I was playing for the Red Sox that year, and my uniform was too tight. My socks were probably too high, and possibly even wore mismatched cleats as well. But I hit a home run, dead center field. 195 feet from home plate it was, and it was a Dave Kingman type home run. I really got under it, but I pushed it over the fence. And then a rain delay set in, and I heard a couple coaches talking over there at the snack bar, which was the only place of shelter. We didn't have dugouts back then. We had benches. The parents sat in the beach chairs, the plastic beach chairs that would hurt your legs if you had shorts. Same chairs you'd set out in the city when you wanted to save your spot for that you had shoveled the snow away from. So anyway, coaches were talking about canceling the game at that point because it was not a regulation 5-inning game or 6-inning game, whatever. So I remember being very nervous about it, and one of the coaches looked at me and said, "Nah, we gotta wait it out." So anyway, that home run, official home run, it's in the books somewhere. And then a week or two later, I remember really jacking a ball. And I said jacking a ball, and I hit the ball so hard, I pulled the thing down the left field line. Left fielder went back, and up against the fence. It hit him in the head, and it stayed in the park. So I had the opposite experience of Jose Canseco. That would have been my second home run, but it hit the kid in the head. Mike Karcheski, thank you for that. That would have been double the record. And instead, I got a long single, almost got thrown out at first probably on that play as well. That was 185 feet according to the sign back there. Record now is 3 home runs by Jackson Shane Keating, and we'll see what happens with the next generation. That's my son, Jackson, ended up jacking 3 home runs over the fence in his Little League days. So congratulations, Jackson. Again, snack bar back there. I can't remember eating anything but bubble gum from there. And just brings back memories. There's the field really hasn't changed that much here. Like I said, they got some dugouts going on, but they're not in-ground dugouts. They're just covered. Got some bleachers. The playground looks a little less dangerous than it did back in the day. We all had that spinny thing that you either threw up or got thrown from. if it spun around hard enough and by the bigger kids. So this was, like I said, this is where I learned to love baseball. I thought I was going to be a baseball player like everybody else. Turns out where I grew up, Audubon / Lower Providence Township, only one baseball player ever came from here, and that was Robbie Wine Jr., who Bobby Wine's son. Bobby Wine was a big leaguer, coached for the Phillies for many years, lived kind of down the street from us, and that was probably the local legend. But anyway, you weren't going to become a big leaguer coming out of this Audubon Recreation Association program, that's for sure. But we had a lot of good times. We dressed really well, smartly, as they would say. I remember one day I was getting ready to go to my Little League game. That wasn't Little League, my Audubon Recreation Association game. And I was walking home from school and cutting through the backyard. The backyard was about 60 acres of woods. And the neighbor's dog jumped out and bit me in the leg. So I had to go to the hospital, get stitches, and I went right from the hospital to baseball. And I remember that was a brown corduroy game, so I wasn't quite in the major leagues yet. And I was wearing brown corduroys and a red top. We were probably the Reds. We weren't the Phillies back then because there was an unwritten rule that there were no Phillies teams in Audubon Recreation Association. I think that was meant to keep everything fair. And oddly enough, when my oldest son started playing baseball, where we live now, there was a Phillies team, and it was coached by Richie Ashburn Jr., Richie Ashburn's son, and Harry Ashburn was one of the players on the other team who was named after Harry Cowell. So that's about as close as we got to greatness, but much later on in life, of course. So, yeah, that's it. Audubon Recreation Association. It's still going strong. Of course, we would age out of this eventually, and we would go to the bigger fields, which were much more intimidating. I was a first baseman, so I didn't have to go too far, cover too much ground. But I remember walloping a ball and thinking I hit the ball farther than anybody ever, and it landed about a foot into the outfield grass at that level. So kind of at that age, you kind of get a little older and your interests get more varied. I started getting into music more back then. The uniforms were all the same other than a patch representing a team on the chest. The fields were spread out all over the township, so there was no kind of sense of community with the older league, as they say. So Audubon Recreation Association, now renamed the Methacton Audubon Recreation Association. This is where it all began. This is where I fell in love with baseball and fell in love with collecting. So this, again, is hallowed ground for me. I hope you guys and gals out there have had that same experience of kind of where it all started for you. I was lucky to be raised in a family on my mother's side of true baseball nuts, Philadelphia Athletics fans. My grandmother were born in the 1800s, and they got to see the early Connie Mack dynasty and the middle Connie Mack dynasty, and they got to see the Philadelphia Athletics leave Philadelphia, and that's when everybody adopted the Phillies as our club. So anyway, that's my trip back to Audubon, PA. They say you can't go back. I'm back. I'm in a beach chair. I'm in right field. Clouds are gorgeous today. No threat of tornado. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. I've been remiss in my little tagline that you're supposed to have by saying enjoy collecting, and more importantly, enjoy your collection. Everybody be safe. Thanks for listening, watching, and have a great, great, great time, whatever you're doing.